Explosive evidence kept from the jury that convicted Karmelo Anthony, now taking center stage as the Texas teen fights for a new trial after being found guilty of fatally stabbing 17-year-old Austin Metcalf at a high school track meet.
Do you have anything that you'd like to say, Karmelo? Do you have anything that you'd like to say to the victim, to the family of the victim? Why were you armed, sweetheart? Karmelo, why were you armed at school? Explain your self-defense. How is this self-defense?
That's what you're not gonna do. You do not get in a woman's face. 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 I don't give a fuck about none of this. You do not get in a woman's face. You do. As a matter of fact, no, you do not get it. Hold up. Don't touch me. No, I'm gonna smile. Because the funny part is, hold up.
There was a deal. A secret deal made before the trial even started. And because of that deal, the jury that convicted Karmelo Anthony of murder and sent him to prison for 35 years never heard some of the most significant evidence in this entire case. Not about the stabbing, not about the tent, not about the knife, about who these two teenagers actually were. We are talking about a 75-page file on Karmelo Anthony that the jury never saw. Text messages prosecutors say show an obsession with knives. A message sent at 1 a.m. on the day of the stabbing that allegedly said, "I'm low-key on the verge." A photo of a knife sent to his ex-girlfriend that same morning. And allegations from that ex-girlfriend, made to school official hours before the track meet even began, that Anthony was stalking her and refusing to let the relationship end. None of that was in the courtroom. The jury never heard it. But here's the thing that has set the internet on fire. The hidden evidence did not only cut against Karmelo Anthony. The defense had a file too. 20 pages on Austin Metcalf and his twin brother Hunter. School records. Juvenile court documents. Allegations of violence. Allegations of racism so severe that when they were read aloud in a Texas courtroom in August 2026, people sat in stunned silence. According to court records introduced at the new trial hearing, Austin Metcalf and his brother Hunter were previously caught spray painting racist and anti-Semitic graffiti. The words KKK kill all blacks, Heil Hitler, the N-word, and an upside-down cross. They were placed on juvenile probation. There are also allegations that the twins bullied a black student at school. That Austin was suspended after he and another student discussed bringing a gun to school. That he was banned from girls' basketball games for using profanity toward players on the court. And that text messages between the brothers discussed getting kicked out of a football game because they wanted to, in their own words, beat up other kids. More than 50 violent or racially inappropriate incidents allegedly documented between both boys. Going all the way back to 2010, the jury that convicted Karmelo Anthony of murder heard none of it. And the question that is now sitting in front of the new judge in the Texas courthouse with a deadline on Monday to answer it is this. Did hiding all of that from the jury produce a fair trial? Or did it produce a verdict built on an incomplete picture of two teenagers who were far more complicated than either side wanted the public to know? If you are not subscribed to Mystora Crimes yet, do it right now and turn on the bell, because this case is not over. And what is coming out of that courtroom is only getting bigger. Stay with me. To understand what is happening right now, you have to go back to before the trial even began. This case was, from the very first week, a powder keg, two teenagers, one dead, one accused, one black, one white. In a nationally watched case already drowning in death threats, doxing, swatting, and social media misinformation. Both sides knew that if the full backgrounds of these boys were laid out in open court, the trial would stop being about what happened under a tent and start being about something else entirely. So they made a deal, verbal, off the record. No paperwork. Prosecutor Bill Worski has said publicly he was the one who proposed it. Both sides would keep character evidence about Anthony and the Metcalf twins out of the trial entirely. Focus stays on the tent. Nothing before it. Worski later testified he was not even certain much of that evidence would have been legally admissible. That going near it would have been sloppy. That bringing in character witnesses would have been death by 1,000 cuts for both sides. But Anthony's original defense attorney, Toby Shook, has testified the deal had a consequence neither side fully anticipated because of that agreement, and the fear prosecutors would break it if Anthony took the stand. Karmelo Anthony did not testify in his own defense. The only person who could tell the jury in his own words what he feared in those final seconds sat completely silent. Shook testified that he told Anthony there was a 99% chance he would testify, that it was essential for the jury to hear from him directly, and that keeping him off the stand ultimately damaged the self-defense case in ways that could not be repaired. Then on the final day of trial, the agreement collapsed. A shouting match between lawyers in front of Anthony while he was preparing to decide whether to testify. Worski's version is completely different. He testified Anthony's testimony was never part of any agreement, that it was never discussed. The two accounts are fundamentally incompatible. Both attorneys were in the room, and the fact that none of it was written down in a nationally watched murder trial is something both sides now have to live with. When the new trial hearing opened on August 20th, 2026, both sides arrived with files. What those files contain has shifted how many people are reading this case. Prosecutors alleged Anthony had a documented pattern of aggression, school suspensions for fighting, and enrollment by his own parents in a program at LSU designed for young people struggling to control physical behavior. They also introduced texts the jury never saw. One sent at 1 a.m. on the day of the stabbing allegedly read, "I'm low-key on the verge." Prosecutors say he also sent his ex-girlfriend a photo of a knife that same morning. His ex-girlfriend, identified in reporting as Valerie Perez, allegedly told a school official that morning that Anthony was stalking her, driving past her home, refusing to let the relationship end. Then the defense opened their file on Austin Metcalf. Court records documented allegations that Austin and Hunter Metcalf spray-painted racist and anti-Semitic graffiti, KKK kill all blacks, Heil Hitler, the N-word, and an upside-down cross. Both brothers were placed on 12 months of juvenile probation. Records also allege the twins bullied a black student in class, that Austin was suspended over an alleged discussion about bringing a gun to school, and that both brothers were removed from a football game for allegedly wanting to fight other attendees. Anthony's former attorney, Mike Howard, testified his team had documented more than 50 violent or racially inappropriate incidents involving the Metcalf twins going back to 2010, none of which the jury ever heard. Here's where we are right now. And I want to be careful here, because this is a part of the story where facts matter more than anything else. Karmelo Anthony has been convicted of murder. That conviction stands unless a judge overturns it. He is currently serving a 35-year sentence at a prison near Navasota, Texas. A new judge, retired Judge Michael Chitty, has until Monday to decide whether to grant a new trial. If he does not sign an order by that deadline, under Texas law, the motion is automatically denied. The defense is making several arguments. They say the original trial judge violated Anthony's rights by holding undocumented, off-the-record proceedings. They say the courtroom was effectively closed to the public for portions of the trial. They say the gentleman's agreement broke down at the worst possible moment and directly led Anthony to waive his right to testify when he'd been planning to do so. And they argue that the collapse of that agreement, in a shouting match between lawyers in front of Anthony himself, was fundamentally unfair and violated his right to due process. The prosecution maintains the trial was fair. Worski has said the agreement was honored, that Anthony's testimony was never part of any deal, and that the jury heard extensive evidence and returned a unanimous verdict. Now here is the question I keep turning over. Two separate files. One with 75 pages on Karmelo Anthony. One with 20 pages on Austin Metcalf. Both sides agreed to hide all of it. Both sides said they were doing it to protect the integrity of the trial and keep the focus on what actually happened at the track meet. But both sides also had something to gain from that agreement. The prosecution did not want a jury seeing text messages about knives. The defense did not want a jury hearing that their client was on the verge the night before the stabbing. And so a mutual decision was made to present a version of both of these teenagers that was, at minimum, incomplete. The jury that convicted Karmelo Anthony of murder voted based on what they were shown. They were not shown the full picture of either teenager involved. They were shown a version of events that both legal teams had agreed to in a private, undocumented, unenforceable verbal deal. Does that mean the verdict was wrong? Not necessarily. Austin Metcalf is still dead. one stab wound, one confrontation that witnesses say Anthony escalated, a knife that nobody could explain. Those facts did not change when the files were opened this week, but it does mean the jury made a decision without knowing everything. And in a murder case, where a 19-year-old is going to spend at least 17 and a half years in prison, the question of whether they had the full picture is not a small one. So here's what I want to ask you directly, and I want your honest answer in the comments. There's a Monday deadline, and whatever the judge decides, this case is not going to quietly end. If a new trial is granted, the Metcalf family will sit in a courtroom again and hear their son's past laid out in front of another jury. If the motion is denied, Anthony's legal team has made clear they will keep pushing through the appellate process. One way or another, it continues. The gentleman's agreement is disputed at its core. Two experienced attorneys who were in that room are giving incompatible accounts of what it covered and how it collapsed. One says Anthony testifying was always part of the understanding. One says it was never discussed. Nobody wrote it down. In a nationally watched murder trial, that is either standard legal practice or a catastrophic failure. And right now, a judge has to decide which. What do you do with the knowledge that Austin Metcalf allegedly spray-painted KKK Kill All Blacks on a wall, and that a jury deciding the fate of a black teenager who said he feared for his safety never heard that? Does it change what happened under the tent? No. But does it change the context around it? That is the question that does not go away. And what do you do with I'm low-key on the verge, sent at 1 a.m, hours before the stabbing? Does that prove a plan? No. But it tells you something about the state of mind walking into that stadium. Something the jury was never shown. This case was never simple. It was not simple in April 2025. It was not simple during a trial where both sides quietly buried what they knew. And it is not simple now. Does Karmelo Anthony deserve a new trial if he gets one with all of this on the table? Do you think the outcome changes? Drop your honest answer in the comments right now. Subscribe to Mystora Crimes, hit that bell, and stay close, because this case has a deadline, and we will be here when the ruling drops. See you in the next one.